SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs.
We're talking about Lachlan Galvin again because there's only two stories in rugby league each week. What Lachlan Galvin doing and what Kyle Flanagan is doing. That's the only two stories in rugby league. Kyle Flanagan actually isn't on the rundown directly this week, but indirectly. We can start with Jonah Glover, who has signed with the Rabbitohs because Wayne Bennett will sign anyone to put them ahead of Lewis Dodd, it seems. So he signed a reserve grade half that is behind Kyle Flanagan to the Rabbitohs, who will be placed in front of Lewis Dodd at the Rabbitohs. But Jonah Glover has said, now that everybody's like, it's so funny, man. Now that he's signed, now he'll talk smack about the Dragons. And he said because he's behind Kyle Flanagan at the Dragons. And so that's why he's decided to leave.
Yeah, well, that's according to the report that was in the Sydney Morning Herald. The Sydney Morning Herald got hold of the story before it was made official, and it was made official by the Rabbitohs that they've signed Jonah Glover. But yeah, according to that Sydney Morning Herald report, Jonah Glover believed he was little chance of replacing Kyle Flanagan at the Dragons, and that was one of the main reasons why he decided to leave. So the reason that I put this on the rundown was just because, it's just more evidence of the flow-on effects from the nepotism that's going on with Shane Flanagan just blindly picking his son at halfback every week. And now it's as I say, it's having flow-on effects. Now players in the lower grades, the lower grade side that's doing very well at the moment, by the way, are jumping ship and moving to other clubs. So this Kyle Flanagan, Shane Flanagan saga just keeps rolling on.
Yeah, like people are. I think we talked about it last week. People are calling for Jonah Glover to be moved up to. In place of Kyle Flanagan, or Lachlan Ilias to be moved up in place of Kyle Flanagan, but Lachlan Ilias wasn't the catalyst for the Dragons in the New South Wales Cup going so well. As I said last week, they were winning before he went there, and they just continued the winning when he went there. Thing is, he's behind not just Kyle Flanagan, he's clearly behind, what's his name, Lachlan King Tongia. And then you would have to say he's also behind Lachlan Ilias, and then next year they've signed Daniel Atkinson, so he'd also be behind them. I reckon it's a little bit of a media beat up that he said that, because if you read the full quotes, he actually goes on to criticize people in them, the public, for their ongoing criticism of Kyle Flanagan, and he acknowledges the fact that they've signed. I always Daniel Atkinson, Daniel Atkinson next year, who is clearly going to be ahead of him in the pecking order.
I guess there is. You're right. There is that pecking order there, and obviously, he's a player who was down the pecking order at the Dragons. There's no doubt about it. But it's more like looking at it from a big picture point of view. Not everything is about what's going to happen in first grade this week. It's also about. There are also longer-term considerations. What does our team look like in 2 years, 3 years down the track? And there's, I guess there's multiple factors to consider here rather than just what does our team look like, our first-grade team look like this week or next week?
That's what I think, I don't know, you don't know the thought process behind it or whatever, but that's what I think Jonah Glover should be looking at, because Kyle Flanagan's there for 3 years or 2 more years or whatever. And like I said,
you don't seem too thrilled about that.
Well, it's just
I can see why you're not thrilled about
it. And then, like I said, Atkinson is coming next year, and then they'll have King Tongia and Ilias, right? Even then, that's kind of like too many first grade halves as well. So, you know, which one of them is gonna? You got to worry as a Dragons fan and like, as the Dragons, which one of those guys is going to feel the next rumblings of, well, Kyle Flanagan's ahead of me? Because what you've really got is Kyle Flanagan and three now from next year, and it was also this year, three guys vying for the same spot. You know, like one spot, whereas it should be, if you have four halves, it's four halves vying for two spots. But at the moment, you've got Kyle Flanagan and one other spot that all the other halves or potential halves are gonna be vying for. So I think like Jonah Glover was really measured, right? And like I said, I think the headline didn't give away the full quote enough. Like the headline is obviously just basically based around Shane Flanagan will only ever pick his son and everyone else is leaving because of it. But really, when you read the actual like extended quotes, there's more to it. But like. He's right, and also you'd have to wonder what's going to happen next year. I really think he needs to, like I said, I think the story there more is the Lewis Dodd one, actually. Because, like, Wayne Bennett clearly has a problem with Lewis Dodd. And is he down on, like, what did he do to Wayne Bennett that Wayne Bennett would sign basically the fourth string half at the Dragons over to the Rabbitohs, you know?
Yeah, he's barely got a look in, Lewis Dodd. Barely got a look in at the Rabbitohs. We're going to be talking about their recruitment in a second as well. But yeah, look, just on Glover, I just saw... Again, I'm not necessarily saying he's in the right or he's in the wrong. I've just seen reporting where according to these reports, he said that one of the reasons why he's left is because he didn't think he would be a chance of replacing Kyle Flanagan at the Dragons. I'm just going on what the report said.
Yeah, no,
I'm not saying
it's 100% true. He did say that, and it's 100% true. Yeah. He's no chance, and it's not just Kyle. What I'm saying is, it's not just Kyle Flanagan. He's basically no chance of replacing King Tonga. Lachlan Ilias and next year Daniel Atkinson as well.
But if they had have signed Toby Sexton, he'd be at the top of the pecking order, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, it would be Sexton and Flanagan, you'd think. no matter who they sign, it's no matter which half they sign, it's all those halves are vying for that second spot. Is the real
That's
problem.
The thing. He might sign one really good half, but that would only be to play with his son. He wouldn't sign two really good halves.
Exactly.
Because then that'd wipe his son out of the team. Can I just read out a little passage from Danny Weidler's column, which I found really interesting on this subject? It's just Danny Weidler's column in the Herald on Sunday. He quotes Shane Flanagan to start off. He says, "To say Kyle is under pressure is ridiculous," Flanagan said. "He's been among our best players all year." This is what Shane Flanagan said about his son Kyle. He goes on, he says, "It's not me, ask the other players and coaches. I'm probably harder on Kyle than any player." End quote. Now I'm going to read out a little passage Danny Weidler wrote after that quote. So this is Danny Weidler. He says, "Those comments have gone down badly with those close to him at the club. Those who understand the media game told Shane Flanagan, it would be a bad idea to make such statements. There was speculation the board was not impressed, but that has been denied. However, sections of the playing group certainly don't agree with Flanagan's appraisal and defence of his son. The quotes above have been talked about by members of the playing group and also by former players who have been in contact with the current group." I've just got a few more paragraphs to go. "It was brought to my attention by those close to the players, and I was asked to make it clear that they have not been well received." This is what Danny Weidler wrote. This columnist, that's Weidler talking about himself, says, "was even confronted by some at the Dragons after I said I felt sorry for Kyle. I was reminded that he's on a salary that he would not get at any other club, playing in a position that he would not be playing at any other club. I've also been told that former Dragons half Ben Hunt found it uncomfortable playing with Kyle. Some players have made comments about enjoying playing on the other side of the field to him, and other teammates are upset by the number of Player of the Match awards he's receiving from the coaching staff. That's an interesting passage written by Danny Widler in the Herald on Sunday.
Well, I wonder if he gets Favourite Son Awards. They should just rename it Favourite Son Awards. Yeah, I think this is all coming to a head. There's going to be a review at the end of the year, for sure. Despite what happens, whether the Dragons finish first or last, there's going to probably be a review at the end of the year, and it's all going to come to a head because there's just too much talk about it. They had a what is it called? One of those saved Kyle Flanagan's media for the week with the win over the Eels, and he was pretty good in that win, but it'll keep going. And
but a win over the Eels isn't going to make this go away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes away for 1 week. There's other stuff to talk about, but then
it'll come back into focus.
Yeah, so because their run is so hard, even if he is legitimately the best on field, they've got to play the Raiders, the Roosters, the Bulldogs, the Cowboys who are erratic, the Raiders, the Sharks, the Warriors, the Rabbitohs who are second last, the Sea Eagles who are erratic, and the Panthers. But they're going to lose Raiders, probably Roosters, definitely Bulldogs, probably Cowboys, definitely Raiders, probably Sharks, probably Warriors. You can't trust them against the Rabbitohs or the Sea Eagles, and definitely Panthers. So they're most likely going to lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of their last. How many more to go? 12.
So they've played
14
games. They've got 10 games to go.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose.
So they're not going to make the 8.
Yeah.
And so that's where the problem's going to be. That's the thing. The chances that they're going to make the 8 are slim. You have to say based on that draw.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem's going to be for Flanagan. I don't think it really matters if they come 9th, 10th, 13th, 14th. If they miss the 8, it'll be the same. He'll have the same problem, and he's probably going to have to explain at the end of the season why he should hang on to his job, I would have thought.
It's unfortunate because, he is, like we've said before, at the Sharks, it took him 3-4 years to make the finals. But at the Sharks, he didn't have Kyle Flanagan there, stuck in the position no matter what. He named Lachlan Ilias again this week, right?
Let's have a look at that.
Yeah, he did at number 21.
Yeah, so again, the meaningless naming of him in the extended squad when he's not really going to play again, just to make it look like he's rewarding him for his solid form in reserve grade.
You see some of those things like Danny Widler talked about the players, and the fact that Jack DeBellin was let go, and there's video footage of him now after the game on the weekend signing stuff, and then somebody says to him like, I can't believe they let you go, and he says, yeah, it's broken my heart, I wanted to stay here forever, like that kind of thing. You'd have to think that someone like Jack DeBellin is probably one of those players that is perhaps not happy with the Kyle Flanagan situation. There's probably others. So
Shane Flanagan, he's on a 3-year contract, so that contract expires at the end of next season. So, if they don't make the 8, which it looks like they won't at this stage, he's certainly going to have some explaining to do at the end of the season. And look, even if they hang on to him next year, I can't see them giving him an extension. They'll need to see how he goes early next year. If they miss the 8 this year, then they're not going to give him an extension.
It's going to be one of those.
It'll be one of those, he's got 6 weeks or 8 weeks to keep his job type situations.
Yep.
That's what it'll be, and the pressure will really be on.
Yeah.
Because this is a problem for me, and I've said it a few times, is that while Kyle Flanagan's there, as you said, they might recruit 1 gun half to partner him, but they're not going to recruit 2 gun halves. And the reality is that, and it's not like they haven't had any other options. Toby Sexton, we're going to talk about it later, has now just signed a 2-year deal with Catalans in the Super League. So that's someone who Shane Flanagan has decided not to pursue, and he could have pursued him. He's decided not to, and now he's going to have to wear the consequences of that decision not to pursue certainly a very a very good recruiting target in Toby Sexton.
Yep, exactly. It's all going to, like I said, I think it's all going to come to a head at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think I think you mentioned there were some of the Dragons board members who were hesitant about signing Shane Flanagan as coach because they were worried about him giving Kyle Flanagan special treatment.
Yeah.
Well, I think those board members you were talking about were on the money with their concerns.
Yeah, I think so. But we can discuss the Rabbitohs now.
Yes.
Lewis Dodd's been named at 17 this week. God knows what's going on at the Rabbitohs, but they're second last on the ladder. But the Dolphins put 50 on them, right?
Yeah.
So 3 times in 4 weeks, the Dolphins have scored 50 points.
They're pretty handy.
They're currently sitting on the top of the ladder for 4 with 478, but they have added 150 in the last 4 weeks to that. Even in the game they lost against the Knights, they still scored 20. They have only scored under 20 points, I think it's 3 times, 5 times this year. And even the rounds they scored under 20, one of them was 18. They're
very impressive.
Their smallest score this year is 12, so a minimum of 2 tries. But yeah, they put 50 on the Rabbitohs. And the Rabbitohs are now second last on the ladder. And what are they doing with Lewis Dodd?
Well, he's only played... You mentioned that he's been named on the bench this week, but he's only played 3 games this season, and 2 of those were off the bench. He's only started in one of them at 5'8". So, yeah, Wayne Bennett's just given him the cold shoulder for most of the season. So, while there are problems at the Rabbitohs and with their recruitment, you can't be blaming Lewis Dodd because he hasn't got a look in. So you can't blame him for where they are because they haven't given him an opportunity. But, in terms of Wayne Bennett, well, you'd have to say it. They're second last on the ladder. Everyone jumped on Jason Demetriou when Souths weren't performing. But you look at Jason Demetriou's record, and I know Wayne Bennett guided them to a grand final in 2021 before he left. But Jason Demetriou made a prelim in 2022, came 9th in 2023. 2024 they finished second last. But you can't really hold that against Demetriou because he was sacked early in the season in April. So, you can't hold their end of season finish really against somebody who was sacked in April. So, and then Wayne Bennett takes over and they're second last this year. So where's the master coach magic dust from Wayne Bennett this year? It's been nowhere to be seen.
Well, you look at it, right? This is how far down Lewis Dodd is in the pecking order. Because, what's his name? Cody Walker, who's their 5'8", is gone down injured. He has been named this week, but on the extended, and he's not playing. They do have a lot of injuries, right? But he's gone down injured. And Latrell Mitchell's obviously gone to Origin, right? So instead of naming Lewis Dodd to replace their injured 5'8", Lewis Dodd is a half, they named ex-centre, current back rower Ewan Aitken in the centres and moved gun centre Jack Whiten into 5'8". So
and Jack Whiten, he arrived as a test player and an Origin player on $800,000 a season. He hasn't played to that price tag.
No, he hasn't. I think maybe because he's old.
Well, there's no point in people blaming Lewis Dodd who can't get a gig or has only played 3 games in first grade all year, 2 of them off the bench, and now, as you said, he gets another gig on the bench this week, but not even where he should be in the halves. Why isn't he in the halves? As you said, he's on the bench. Jack Whiten hasn't played to an $800,000 a year price tag this year at all.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Talk about Jason Demetriou. Obviously, Wayne Bennett killed the what are they called? Killed the Rabbitohs when he left, and then killed them again the following year. Well, when he was coming back, but he hasn't done anything, right? And so, wait. They signed Michaeli Ravalawa halfway through the year or something, right? From the Dragons?
I think so. I will check that though. But I mean, with Wayne Bennett, I mean he hasn't won a premiership for 15 years now.
He's on loan to the Rabbitohs.
Right, okay. Wayne Bennett hasn't won a premiership for 15 years. Everyone just always says really quickly, he's the master coach, he's the master coach. Well, yeah, he was the master coach when he had basically an Australian side playing for his club at the Broncos. And I know he won that title at your Dragons. And again, that was probably his best coaching achievement because they were a club who hadn't won a title for a long time before that. Yeah. But 6 of his 7 premierships came with a Broncos side that was basically the Australian side in a club side. And based on that, everyone says, he's a master coach, hasn't won a premiership for 15 years. And he's taken over at South this year and they're second last. So where's the Wayne Bennett magic dust this year?
I mean, he's only there for... Did he sign a 3-year deal? 2-year or 3 years?
I think it's 3.
And they want him to go to PNG and be coaching director or whatever as well, you know. There's a whole bunch of Rabbitohs players off contract. And, you know, just 2 of the names really stand out, right? Alex Johnston and Cody Walker are off contract. Are they going to re-sign Alex Johnston, the most prolific try scorer almost in the history of the game? Yeah, they have had a lot of injuries. That's one of the things. Like, a lot of their main players are out, and still I don't think Latrell Mitchell is firing on all cylinders for the Rabbitohs.
No, he hasn't. That's the thing, and I know he can do some great things and he can win you a game like I think he did against the Broncos with that field goal, that huge field goal. I know he can win you a game with a moment of brilliance, Latrell. But again, the team that he's playing for are second last on the ladder. Yeah. That's the fact of the matter here. So he's not... I think the point is he's not doing that enough for them. He does it in patches. He can come up with a brilliant match-winning play. But he's just not... He just doesn't do it regularly enough for them. And that's why they are where they are on the table.
That was the whole thing, right? Well, obviously there's no news about Latrell Mitchell this year, which is good. Wayne Bennett solved that one problem. Maybe next year when they don't have as many injuries, we'll all eat our words. But this year you have to say the Rabbitohs are underperforming again for the 3rd year in a row. Given the roster they had, yes, they have injuries. But it's recruitment decisions and... team naming decisions that are what are making it confusing for everyone, you know? Like, why do they borrow Ravalawa anyway, right? They don't name him. They don't use him. How many games has he played for the...
I'll check that. I'll check how many games he's played this season. You talked about Bennett. He is on a 3-year contract until the end of 2027. But I think they are keen to lock him in for 2028, and I think that's because they're worried about this PNG team... taking him.
So they borrow Ravalawa and he's played 3 games for the Rabbitohs.
Right. Okay.
It's just like the team names, the signings, the fact that like Alex Johnston is off contract and hasn't been re-signed. How old's Alex Johnston?
And I know. Excuse me. I know they've had a lot of injuries. But at the end of the season, nobody remembers that. It's exactly. A harsh reality. At the end of the season, as a coach, at the end of the day, you're judged on your results. Yeah, and that's it. That's the way it goes.
The way it really breaks. Like, I was actually talking about this on the weekend. After a certain amount of time, no one remembers the caveats and just looks at the numbers, right? So recently, like, John Jones got the longest reigning title as a heavyweight, longest reign as the heavyweight champion of the UFC, but he didn't fight. Right, and you know that now because it's recent.
Yeah.
But in 5 years, people are just going to look at a ladder on Wikipedia and see John Jones was a heavyweight champion for 600 days or whatever it was.
That's the thing, and it goes both ways, right? Like, well, with Wayne Bennett, we all think about that gun Broncos side he had and won 6 premierships. But, and, you know, a lot of us think that, you know, it had everything to do with their roster at the time and little to do with Bennett himself. But Bennett gets the credit for winning those 6 premierships. So you got to take the good with the bad. If you're taking the credit for the 6 premierships you won with the gun state of origin Australian roster that you had, well, you've also got to take the criticism when you're not winning games, even if even if injuries have played a part this season.
I was actually doing, because Smart Play, I was looking at player squads. We got to, audit our squads every week. And what I realised is the Raiders changed the least. So the Raiders, like,
they're having a good run with injuries.
Anecdotally, I don't know the stats or anything, but they seem to me, I've only been doing squad auditing for the past, 3 or 4 weeks. They seem to be the ones that are this year, the guys that don't have lots of in and outs, since they seem to be having the run with the best squad. And the Rabbitohs change heaps. Actually, they're one of the ones that's right up there, right? So I've constantly got ins and outs with the Rabbitohs. Like, you look at even this week with their team being named, Brandon Smith, Jacob Huss, Lewis Dodd, Liam LeBlanc and Ryan Gray were ins. But then 3-4 players get dropped from the numbers. But Brandon Smith named on the extended bench now. He'll be back soon into the starting lineup. So it does make a difference. But again, like you said, it doesn't matter in the end. In the end, all that we're going to remember is they missed the 8. They come in second last. I don't think they're in danger of the wooden spoon because there are a couple of teams that are just worse than them. Because also, it's one of those things where we look at the ladder, right? They've had 6 wins, 10 losses. They're behind the Eels, who have had 5 wins, 10 losses. They're behind the West Tigers, who have had 5 wins, 10 losses because of the buys. So in the end, if the season was to end now and we apply all the buy points, Rabbitohs would be above, I think, they'd be 14th. That's not good, but it's better than where they are now. But still, that's all we're going to remember. They came 14th. That's the missed the thing. Doesn't matter why. Doesn't matter how. They've lost their last 5, right?
Yeah, it's not a good record that they've got at all at the moment. They've won just 2 of their last 11 games. So that's a very poor run. There's no doubt about it. As we've said, injuries have crippled them this season, but you're judged on your results at the end of the day. And as I said before, you can't take. If you're going to take all the credit for all those premierships, when a lot of observers think he had little to do with it at the Broncos, you still have to take responsibility when your team are struggling and they're second last on the ladder, even if there are a lot of injuries. You have to take the good with the bad, and you can't have it both ways on that. But it has been a long time, and I know he got close with the Broncos in 2015 and with Souths in 2021. I know they both came close to winning those grand finals. And he could easily be, 2 premierships better than what he is at this point. But the reality is, 15 years without a premiership, that's a long time without a premiership. Yeah, we've talked about it a few times. I can't think of many coaches who wouldn't have won those titles that he won at Brisbane. Again, the premiership he won at the Dragons was his best coaching achievement by far, I think. The ones at the Broncos, though, the roster they had was just unbelievable.
Well, even the Dragons people give it a write-off because it was the year that Melbourne couldn't play for points. So the season wasn't proper. It was easier for him to win because 2010 Melbourne couldn't play for points.
Yeah, but I mean, the Storm had to pay a price for.
Yeah, well, they were cheating everybody.
Yeah, they had to pay a price for.
They cheated, right?
Rorting the salary cap by huge amounts of money.
That year they were also rorting the salary cap. That was one of the major reasons why they could, because they had to clean up the salary cap.
So I don't go along with that. Yeah. The Storm deserve to be punished for their salary cap rorting. So I don't buy that.
You also can't see improvement in the Rabbitohs. That's the other thing, right? That people are seeing with the Rabbitohs. You can't see improvement. They're chopping and changing their team due to injuries or whatever. They're not, in theory, picking the best possible team. Lewis Dodd actually does get a lot of criticism from fans and stuff because the 3 games he has played haven't been that good, and he was terrible in the Charity Shield where the Rabbitohs got pumped. But
who cares?
Yeah, even then, you can't get consistency without consistency. So he's been in and off the...
You can't blame a player who's only played 3 games all season and 2 of them have been off the bench for where the team is at this stage of the season.
He should go to the Dragons and be behind Kyle Flanagan. At least then there'd be a reason. Or maybe the Bulldogs will sign him to partner Lachlan Galvin.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that later too.
But let's talk about the Tigers. Because, you can't have a week in rugby league in 2025 without talking about Lachlan Galvin and how he affects the Tigers. So they've let Talon De Silva go to the Eels. Mm-hmm. Who's a talented young hooker, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Only 20 years of age.
He's behind Api Coruscant because the Tigers basically told him they're going to re-sign Api Coruscant. Mm-hmm. He can hang around and wait. Or it's up to him what he wants to do. So he said, I don't want to wait. Fair enough. I want to go make my money. So he's gone to the Eels, which has copped a lot of criticism from people, and the Tigers have basically given up for the year.
Yeah, well, Phil Rothfield, there were some strong quotes from him on NRL 360 the other night. He said, and I quote, "Have they given up? Have they given up on this season?" Rothfield asked. "They're fighting to avoid the wooden spoon. What if Api Coruscant gets hurt?" He said. And there's this idea that, Shane Richardson had some meeting with his mum and dad and they wanted him to leave. And then Rothfield asked, well, do his mum and dad pick the team or something? But then some reporting's come out that supposedly Jerome Luai, Api Coruscant and Benji Marshall are all really tight.
Like they're in a clique.
Yeah, and so... you sort of got to think about it from this point of view. Now, the feeling is that they've let De Silva go to keep Coruscant happy. And the reason that Benji wants to keep Coruscant happy is because Benji has got to win games now to keep his job. Benji can't be thinking about what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years' time because he needs to win now to keep his job. And so he's deciding that in the short term, yes, Coruscant's a lot older than De Silva, of course, but it's going to take De Silva time to develop. He's only 20. And so the feeling is that, well, who gives them a better chance of winning games right now? And his thoughts are that, well, Coruscant does. And so the feeling is that, well, he's let De Silva go to keep Coruscant happy, and because Luai and Coruscant are close as well, he's also keeping Luai happy by doing that, and he needs to keep Luai happy because of these clauses where Luai can get out of his contract really early if he wants to get out. So it's this flow-on effect, and so the feeling is that because those three are really tight, Benji's doing everything possible, so he's putting all his eggs in the Coruscant Luai basket. He's doing everything he possibly can to keep those two happy, because he thinks by doing that he's giving himself the best chance of winning games right now, which he needs to do to keep his job.
Yeah, just to clarify as well, Talon De Silva is going straight away. He's already out
yes. There. And it happened bang on June 30 in the afternoon. I think it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon on June 30. The Eels put out the release that they'd signed him. So they left it to the last minute, but they got him. And that's a lot of people are saying, well, Rothfield even asked... oh, well, why, what if Api Coruscant gets injured? But this was done to appease Coruscant, to say, look, we're backing you in, we're letting this young player who may become a threat to your position in a year or two, we're letting him go right now, and we're backing you in. And it's interesting that and Lachlan Galvin, whatever you think of him, the reports indicate that he felt that way about Luai, Coruscant and Marshall, that they were too close and that they were freezing other players out. And now it seems like De Silva has had the same thought process as Galvin, and now he's gone too.
Yeah, well, when it comes right down to it, right, Benji Marshall will get the sack if he doesn't win games. And then the Tigers will continue to go nowhere. I saw a great thread on Reddit where the Tigers have just become this ongoing sarcastic joke on the internet where this was posted, right, on Reddit, And then pretty much there are some personalities on Reddit, like subreddit personalities. Like if you go to the Sopranos subreddit, whatever anyone says, it'll just be like hammered with quotes from the Sopranos. Right? Yeah. It's hilarious. The Tigers now, every time someone posts anything about the Tigers, everyone's comments are things like, you know what they should try? They should try sacking their coach. Yeah, that might solve their problem. You know what they should try? They should try sacking their whole board. That might solve their problems. You know what they should try? They should try changing their entire team and bringing over a premiership winning 5/8. That can solve their problems. Like, what? They're going to continually cop criticism until they win games, but they just can't win games.
And this is the other thing. The one thing I would say in the Tigers' defence here is, I feel like these young players are getting talked up too much. Yeah. Galvin, I think we all think, or you and I have thought for a while that he's overhyped, and I think he's overrated. In all honesty, I think he's overrated.
Well, he's losing the Bulldogs, you know.
Well, we're going to get to that later, and I put it right down the bottom of the rundown because they're playing tonight, and so I didn't want to lead off with something that could date very quickly, but we will talk about it later. But this is the issue, right? They keep talking up these young players, and we don't know if these young players are going to do anything. At least with Coruscant and Luai, they have well, not at this club, they don't. Yeah, but at their previous club, the Panthers, they have a proven track record being premiership winners. Luai played in 4 straight premierships at the Panthers. I'm pretty sure Coruscant was part of two of those premierships at the Panthers as well. So that's the thing. At least they're investing in guys who are proven performers who've been there and done that while at other clubs. De Silva and Galvin, well, we don't know how they're going to turn out. There's an unknown there. So that's one thing I would say in Benji's defence here, is that, you know, people like Phil Rothfield can say, you know, that, they shouldn't have let De Silva go. And yes, I know he's a young player with a lot of potential. But that's the reality is he's unproven. And like Galvin's unproven as well.
Yeah.
So while it is, you know, while they are throwing all their eggs into the Luai Coruscant basket here, it's probably a safer bet than throwing your eggs into the Galvin De Silva basket, I would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like the Tigers have got a hard draw as well, simply because of where they are. They got the Roosters this week, followed by the Warriors, the Titans, the Panthers, the Bulldogs, the Seagulls, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Titans again. Like, and, you know, the other thing about them is actually they've won 5, lost 10. So they're only 1 win behind that pack of people that have won 6. And they're only 2 wins behind teams that are in the top 8. So it's actually like, right, I don't think until post-Origin period we will actually get a real indicator of where a lot of these teams are. I think the ladder is a little bit deceiving. I know we just went over the Rabbitohs and the Dragons and their ladder positions. The ladder is a little bit deceiving because of the number of buys and the weird staggering of the buys during the Origin period and stuff like that. Like you look at something like the Raiders are on top. They've stolen the Bulldogs' spot. Dolphins are coming 8th, Knights 13th, and Rabbitohs 16th. All of those teams have only had 1 bye. Sharks as well 10th, only had 1 bye. So yeah, it's a little bit. I feel for Benji. I feel for the Tigers. I understand why he's, like you said, like why he's let these. I would have let Galvin go too, you know. But actually, no, I wouldn't have let Galvin go. I would have made Galvin sit in reserve grade for 2 years. But yeah, like it doesn't matter what the Tigers do until they start winning games. Every single decision will be the wrong one to the media and to the fans.
I think you're right. I think this is the thing, and Benji Marshall's contracted until the end of 2027. That doesn't. This is the issue is whether they make a call on Marshall at the end of this year or not, or they give him the start of next year. Either way, whatever they do, he's going to have to start winning soon.
Yeah.
If they keep him at the end of the season, it's going to be on the condition that he wins games early next year.
Yeah.
If they're in this position at this time next year, he won't be in the job. He won't be. If they're you know, one of the struggling clubs in the latter stage of the season next year, he will have been replaced by now. So that's the issue. regardless of whatever else happens, he's got to start winning games, and he's got to start winning soon to hang on to his job. If he keeps losing, he'll be out of a job.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
That's
and he obviously knows that.
That's the Tigers, right? You know, that's just the Tigers, unfortunately. Until someone comes along and fixes their underlying problems and starts winning games, doesn't matter who is there. We know this. Where everybody, you can 100% know this because since they haven't made the finals in like 12 years or whatever it is, right? Since however long it's been since they've gone on this downward slide to be terrible, they've changed coaches. They've changed every single player in the team. They've changed board members. They've changed management. They've changed CEO. They have changed everything. They're now that ship of Theseus, you know, like if you change every single piece bit by bit until you're left with only a splinter of wood, is it still the ship of Theseus or is it a different ship, right? That's what the Tigers are. Are they still the Tigers from 2005?
No.
When was the last time they made the finals?
Yeah, so they came in 2000, they've only made the finals 3 times. 1 year where they won the comp in 2005.
And then Dragons knocked them out.
And then in 2010 and 2011, they made it. But that's it, 3 times. So they haven't made it since 2011 to the finals.
This is the thing, though, right? It's not the ship of Theseus because they are still the Tigers and they still maintain that consistency of they're not even... The thing with them is, like, I find they're not even underperforming. Like you say, Rabbitohs are underperforming. The Tigers aren't underperforming. They're performing exactly as they have for the past however many years, since 2012. And they've changed everything. Until someone comes in and changes the thing that makes them stop doing that, every decision they make is the wrong one.
But this is the issue. Like, they're in the bottom 4 now. They're 14th. That's the thing. They've just brought Jarome Luai this year, and he's, you know, the 4-time premiership winner. So it's, you know, they got Api Coruscant there. This is the thing. This was the year where it was all supposed to change. You know, Luai was supposed to be the circuit breaker. And he just hasn't. And look, I know we weren't expecting the world from them, but I thought they were going to be better than where they are. I didn't think, you know, maybe not top 8, but I would have thought they'd be about 10th by now, not 14th.
The thing with it is, right, the only thing that doesn't change about the Tigers is the negative media sentiment and Benny Elias coming out of the woodwork to make a quote about the Tigers. The other thing that doesn't change is the unnamed source releasing inside information about stoushes at training, and which we'll get to. Like, this is the thing. Like, that's the thing they don't change. They can't change. They don't know how to change. And when you see actual serious discussion about it and they get so sparked up, West Tigers fans, they try to paint this rosy picture depending on which side they're on, right? So the West Magpies fans will go on about how, like, we provide all the money and the good management and all this blah, 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 and the best juniors for the club, and, you know, the Tigers just waste it and it's all the Tigers' fault. And the Tigers people are like, we provide all the fans and the whatever the hell the Tigers provide. And, you know, the West Magpies just mismanage our player recruitment and all this kind of... That's the real issue. The merger is...
The joint venture warring with each other.
Yeah,
the
it's
two
the real
sides
issue.
warring.
And that's, like, you know, by all reports, at a board level, at a club level, and at a fan level, they war with each other. They can't split. Like, I always say they need to split the merger. Apparently they can't. Like, the Tigers just don't have any money. The end result would be the Tigers collapsing. And we just have the West Magpies. And that's the other thing. Like, the identity of the Tigers is the Tigers. You know? That's their identity now. They're the West Tigers and they're the Tigers. Like, it's not... When people say Wests, they're not thinking West Magpies. They're thinking West Tigers.
No, when you hear West Tigers, you think of the Balmain Tigers.
Yeah, exactly.
You do. Yeah.
And so, like, there's like probably some jealousy there, and like it just there's no solution. The only solution is to win games, and as like I keep saying, as long as they lose games, every one of their decisions will be the wrong one because it's not helping them win games. They need to just win games.
Yeah, well, winning makes everything better.
Yeah, exactly.
In the NRL. So
it papers over Kyle Flanagan.
Winning even papers over that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can paper over that, it can paper over anything.
Right. But I think the Tigers should sue Lachlan Galvin for bullying. Honestly, I really think they should issue a legal letter to Lachlan Galvin for bullying because he did a social media post sledging the Tigers.
Yeah.
No different to when people at the Tigers did a social media post.
Yeah, Jerome Luai and Sunia Taruva.
Criticising him, and then he sends a bloody legal letter saying, "Oh, we're suing you for bullying me." They should send him a letter for bullying. They tried to disrupt the Tigers season and Lachlan Galvin's season.
Yeah, so in case...
Bulldogs season, sorry.
Yeah, in case you didn't catch up with it, after Talon De Silva signed with the Eels and joined the Eels, Lachlan Galvin is apparently good mates with De Silva. Lachlan Galvin took a cheeky dig at the Tigers on Instagram with a good luck emoji and the smiley wink. This is this is rugby league media in 2025. Everybody, we're talking about the emojis that players post on social media. That's where it's at.
Yep.
But hey, it's the story. So and as we said just before. Lachlan Galvin accused the Tigers of bullying. That was part of his manager Isaac Moses' strategy to get him out of the contract. That was when Jerome Luai and Sunia Taruva took to social media to have digs at him while that whole fracas over his contract was going on. And now the shoe's on the other foot. Now Lachlan Galvin's taking digs at the Tigers on social media after Talon De Silva's left. I'll tell you what, as a Bulldogs supporter, I'm not happy about this either. Well, after his game on the weekend, he needs to get his mind on the job, on what he's got to do now. As a Bulldogs fan, I don't care about it, I don't care about his spat he's got going on with the Tigers. I want to see him perform for the Bulldogs, and I want to see his focus be solely on that.
He needs a note on his locker that says less posting, more winning. I think the Bulldogs should be really unhappy with him and go tell him to pull his head in.
This is not what we want to see.
Like, petty and small, especially because you kicked up such a stink over them posting stuff about you. Yeah. And then to go
I don't care that he's 19. No, grow up. 19, you're an adult. And small. You're an adult, grow up.
They haven't said anything about him. They could have, we'll get to his game on the weekend. They could have, if I was the boys, Jerome Luai and stuff like that, who have obviously been told to pull their head in and not post social media, much smarter thing to do, they could have mocked him over his game on the weekend. Because, in jiu-jitsu, there's the ultimate internet bully, Craig Jones, who I've talked about before, should come on the podcast and I'll ask him, why the hell are you the way you are? Who, when he has a falling out with someone and that person never mentions Craig Jones again, whenever anything bad happens to that person, like they lose a match, he'll post about it, Like he keeps going on about it because he's petty and small. And he's just going to be Lachlan Galvin for the rest of his days. In 10 years, are the Tigers going to get a wooden spoon and he's going to do some post about the Tigers? Is that his go now?
This is Nick Kyrgios-esque from Lachlan Galvin.
And I like it, Bulldog. I can tell you, Bulldogs fans weren't happy about it, and the Bulldogs management, coaching staff, and players should be unhappy about it and go like, bro.
This is why I'm not happy because no other Bulldogs player would do this year. This is on the whole. I know they lost against Penrith, but on the whole, they've had a very good season this year, and everything's been moving in the right direction. But the Bulldogs players would not have thought about doing anything like this. That they're all sort of in lockstep with each other. They've got their mind on the job. They're not getting distracted. But now he comes along and signs with the club, and he's carrying on like this on social media. I don't like it. It takes the focus away from where the focus needs to be, and the focus needs to be on bouncing back against the Broncos tonight after that loss to Penrith last week.
This was, really one of the issues with the Tigers, right? Earlier in the year. Because they were going quite well first few rounds. We were talking
about. Yeah, well, it all fell apart when he started going to war with the club. That's where it all fell apart, and they haven't recovered since.
His off-field nonsense created off-field nonsense for the Tigers. Did the Bulldogs really want him creating off-field nonsense for the Bulldogs?
But what I don't understand is they knew that going in. They knew they had their eyes open going into it. They knew what they were getting into. Anyway...
You got to wonder, they're walking on eggshells. Like, should we go tell him pull his head in, or will Isaac Moses then destroy our club?
Well, this is a problem. This is the problem once you sign an Isaac Moses player, right?
Yeah.
You bring that to your club. And surely the club's got to be bigger than one player or one player manager.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, well, Benji Marshall has engaged in a opposed session and smashed Adam Doueihi, apparently. And so Adam Doueihi's not taken kindly to it. Why is the coach taking part in a post session? There was a report earlier this year, Piercy talked about it, where Benji Marshall took part in a post session and scored like 6 tries on the defence or something. Why is he participating, first of all, is my first question. Second of all, why is he smashing his own players?
Yeah, it's not... like it's just not a good idea, because you know, if there's instances like this where he has a blow up with one of the players, well, then that causes tension with the other players, and you know what happens if if Benji puts a really good hit on one of the players? What does that do to that player's confidence? Oh, the coach is putting a hit on me like that. What does that do for that player's confidence? On the other hand, what happens if a player puts a really good hit on Benji? What does that do for the players, the way the players view Benji? Do they lose respect for Benji if someone puts him on the ground? These are the things that he needs to think about. And look, this is the thing about Benji, is that, I know the Tigers, he's not the only coach they've had, obviously, and we've gone through their terrible record over a lot of years now, where you can't just blame one coach for it. It's an ongoing systemic problem at the club, clearly. But he's still got control over certain things, and this is something that he has control over, whether he gets involved in opposed sessions with his own players or not.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't be doing it.
This is the thing. There are certain things that he's got no control over, but this is something that he has control over, and you'd think he could have made a smarter decision than to be, going up against his own players at training and getting involved in heated confrontations at training with Adam Doueihi.
Well, Dewey's he's been named this week to play in the... He got carved up last week, as expected, by Tom Trbojevic. I think he's at 5'8" this week, right? Yeah, he's at 5'8" this week.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
And this is the kind of thing where, you think... Benji Marshall go so hard and smash him because he's just trying to show him a 5'8", not a 5'8" should be like, or something like that. And not condoning it or anything, but it's just a weird thing to be doing. And was that his motivation? I'm going to smash him because I'm going to show him who the real 5'8" is. So
what does he have to? He's a coach now. He's not a player anymore. Why is he still? And I know he retired not long ago, but he's the coach now. He's not a player anymore. He doesn't have to. Why does he feel like he has to prove something to his players on the training paddock by participating?
Why is he participating in opposed sessions at all?
He shouldn't be.
There's no. I've watched trainings, right, at club. I've been invited and I've been to special events and all that kind of stuff. Never seen a coach run out in the opposed session.
No.
Never.
Well, it's not their job. Their job is to be the coach. They're not playing anymore. So, this is the thing. A lot of things he can't control. He can't control the infighting that always goes on at the West Tigers. A lot of things that he has no control over. But this situation, surely you think better of it. And if there's a lesson to take out of it, it's no more training, Benji. You're the coach now. Yes. He's got a lot to be... This is the thing. This is a coach as well who doesn't put in the hard yards. He boasts about only being a 9-to-5 coach when every other coach realises that it's a 24/7 job. So even as a 9-to-5 coach, he's still spending some of that time on the training paddock with the players.
Yeah.
So that, if you're a 24/7 coach, at least then you could go, well, he puts in those late night hours into the job as well. But But this is openly a 9 to 5 only coach. And I guess we got to call that into question now as well too, because as I just said, that's another thing that's under his control, the amount of hours that he puts into the job.
I'm really curious as to what team he played for where the coach took part in opposing sessions.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't have been the Rabbitohs when Wayne Bennett was coaching, that's for sure. Not at his age.
He was at the Dragons when Wayne Bennett was there, right?
Yeah, I'd need to double check that.
I think he was at the Broncos when Wayne Bennett was there, right? Was it Tim Sheens who was running out there?
Let me have a look. When was he? So he was at the Dragons 2014 to 16.
And that was after Wayne Bennett then. Was it Steve Price or Mary McGregor? Steve Price.
What was the other team you asked about? The Broncos. So he was at the Broncos in 2017. I think Bennett was there then. But I'll check that. Let's have a look at that. Just bringing up Wayne Bennett's record. 2017. Yeah, Bennett was at the Broncos in 2017. Yeah,
and so he played at the Rabbitohs too, yeah.
Benji? Yeah, he played there the year they made the grand final, 2021. That's what I was talking about when I said that Bennett was coaching him.
Yeah, so it wasn't Wayne Bennett.
That was his last year.
It wasn't Tim Sheens. It wasn't Steve Price or Mary McGregor, whoever was at the Dragons, surely taking part in. What coach has sat there and that he's learnt this from? You know?
I can't work it out. He needs to, again, the lesson to take away from it is don't do this again. He's got enough on his plate at the moment. He needs to start winning games. That's where his focus has got to be, not on, getting in confrontations with his players on the training pad.
Yeah, exactly. 1 second. So Benji's crazy. On the State of Origin, which is in just a few days, Dean Ritchie reckons Billy Slater's going to quit at the end of the series no matter what.
Yeah, there were strong quotes from Dean Ritchie, the Daily Telegraph's Dean Ritchie on NRL 360 the other night. These are his quotes. He says, "To me, when I look at Bill, I don't see a smile on his face anymore.
No,
he doesn't look like a coach who's enjoying his coaching. I just don't know whether Billy looks like a coach that's enjoying it." And then he goes on to say, "I have no mail here, and I have no intuition other than the fact that in my head I'm thinking after this series, win, lose or draw, it just would not shock me if Billy said, you know what, I've had enough."
Well, I reckon what might happen is Billy Slater might move to the Australia coach. Win, lose or draw.
Well, it's an easier gig. There's no doubt about it. It's a much easier gig. So, I mean, it's a possibility, isn't it? It is. Maybe that's why Brad Fittler's just knocked back that job.
That's right.
And that was a bit weird because he said that Brad Fittler said he knocked back the job because they haven't booked hotels yet or training grounds yet. But apparently it's up to the coach to do that. So that's weird, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I'm not taking the job because they haven't booked the hotels or the training grounds. Brad, that's your job to...
Yeah, your job, your staff. They don't know where you want to stay.
It's your job, Brad, to decide the hotels and the training grounds. So I don't know why you're blowing up that they haven't been booked yet when that's your job to pick them. So I didn't understand that. But anyway, getting back to the point... Yeah, well, Cameron Smith has been linked to the job as well, but you might be onto something there. Slater might, at the end of the series, decide, look, I've had enough of this, and he might decide I'd rather coach Australia. No doubt in the world the Australia job would be an easier gig. You've got clearly the best team to pick from. Australia wins every tournament, basically.
Yep.
Apart from that Pacific Championship a couple of years ago, which Michael Maguire pinched from them when he was coaching New Zealand. But apart from that, on the whole, there's the odd exception here or there, but Australia generally win the major tournaments. You've got the best players to pick from. It's an easier gig than the extreme pressure cooker of coaching State of Origin.
Yeah, well, I think Billy Slater doesn't really look suited to coaching, to be honest. He just doesn't seem like a happy camper. Doesn't seem like he can handle the criticism.
No, well, he couldn't handle... we talked about Aaron Woods calling him a grub. extremely thin skin there. We don't need to go back into what he said and everything about Paul Green, but I think it just showed that he really didn't handle the pressure of the situation well at all. And you just feel like from that point of... Obviously, he's got a very good football brain, a very astute tactician, of course. From that point of view, it's not a problem. But from a point of view of being able to handle the inevitable criticism and scrutiny that comes with a huge job like that, clearly he's come up short here, and he's out of his depth here in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. And like if he goes and was to go to coach Australia, that kind of criticism doesn't happen because it's a much
it doesn't happen. There's not as much scrutiny. People, let's be honest, the State of Origin series is on at the height of the season when you got all eyes on you. You've got the two states that hate each other. It's extreme pressure. Yes, it's only 3 games a year, but the pressure is extreme on getting the results. The Australian coaching job, on the other hand, Australia play their games for the most part in October and November when people have sort of clocked off for the year. A lot of fans are clocked off. They're not really paying attention. A lot of the media go on holidays at that time, even when the Kangaroos are playing. A lot of the media... The hard-hitting, top-notch journos take their holidays in October and November, so you don't have the same scrutiny on you as the Australian coach as you do in the pressure cooker of State of Origin, New South Wales or Queensland. And that's the other thing. There's an Ashes tour at the end of the year where...
Is there?
Yeah, rugby league Ashes I'm talking about. Yeah, Australia are playing England this year. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So that's the other point I was going to make. These games are going to be played in England as well.
At 4 a.m.
So this is the thing. Playing against England in October and November, you're not getting anywhere near the same scrutiny on you as the coach as you are if you're the New South Wales or Queensland coach.
Yeah, 100%. So... but yeah, I think he should quit either way if he wins or loses, just because he clearly doesn't handle it very well.
No, and I think Dean Ritchie has got a point. I don't think it matters whether they win or lose. I think he might be done with it either way here. But we'll see what happens.
Coach that should also be done with it either way is Anthony Seibold.
Yeah, very strange, and I did a column on this.
Obviously, his job is he's another one of those coaches that's under pressure because Manly kind of suck. A lot of people are now criticising the choice to move Tom Trbojevic to centre. It'll be like they won. I know it was against the Tigers, but they won.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. After the match or in the...
No, sorry, we just missed it last podcast. It was just before the game.
It was the pre-game things. Yeah. He started to talk about the Ukraine and Russia and like, bro, what are you even saying?
When he was asked about the pressure that's on him, Seibold said this, and I quote, he said, "What's pressure about? Let's put perspective on this. What's going on over in Israel and Ukraine, that's pressure," he said.
Well, nothing's going on in Israel. I think he means Palestine.
Yeah, well, then he went even further and he said, and I quote, "The reality of it is, if you think about life, every single one of us is going to die," he said. "Oh, thanks for telling me. I didn't know." So if you work back from that point, it's not to be morbid, but you really work out what's important in life, end quote, he said. So we're all to take away from this that Anthony Seibold's not really under any pressure as the Manly coach because all of us are going to die at some point, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Well, as a fan, you kind of want your coach to feel the pressure when they're losing, just so you know. Anthony Seibold. So surely the fans aren't real happy with that as well. But it's just bizarre. Like, what are you even talking about? It's by that logic, nothing in rugby league matters at all because we're all going to die at some point. But
so
it is
no one should ever be held accountable for anything because we're all going to die.
It's a ridiculous thing to move to when asked about pressure of NRL coaching. It didn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense. We are all going to die. We shouldn't worry about anything, I guess.
Yeah.
Not a thing.
Yeah, don't hold anyone accountable for anything because we're all going to die.
Anyway. What's the saying? The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Right? So it's not about... I think it's in the TV show The Good Place, right? It's not about judging things that have happened to you or are in your life based on comparison to others, because actually even those people you compare it to have someone to compare it to. So yeah, he talks about the Ukraine or whatever, but which is terrible. But then you think the Ukraine people are sitting there going, oh, you know, it's not so bad. I don't feel the pressure, because there are people in Ethiopia who are starving. And then you go to Ethiopia and they're like, yeah, it's not so bad because, you know, I don't think bad about it because there are people in the Congo that are artisanal miners working for $1 a day. Like, there's no end to it. So it's a ridiculous thing. He has to feel the pressure.
Yeah.
You have to overcome the pressure and you have to start winning games consistently.
Yeah, and all right, at the end of the day, yeah, all right, it is only a game. Look, we get that. But what's happening in Israel or Ukraine, or the fact that we're all going to die, has nothing to do with him and his coaching at Manly. It's irrelevant, and he's just trying to distract everybody from the fact that, you know, Manly have underperformed under his coaching. He missed the finals in the first year, in 2023. Last year they were a bit better. They made the 8 and got to the second week of the finals. But, you know, they're 9th on the ladder now. And this was a roster, and I know they've had the Cherry Evans thing, and I know Tom Trbojevic isn't in form this year like he has been in the past. But these are the curveballs that get thrown at you as a first-grade NRL coach. You're not going to have everything go your way. You've got to be able to navigate that. That's part of your job. The reality is that most good judges had them in the top 4 before the start of the season, and they're 9th on the ladder at the moment, so they're underperforming under him. That's the reality. He can talk about Israel and Ukraine all he wants. That doesn't change the fact that he's underperforming as Manly coach.
Yeah, it's true. Sorry.
And I'm glad that it's all right. I'm glad that the Manly rugby league coach can tell us that we're all going to die one day. I didn't realise that. It's great. Thanks for telling me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Not many of us did. Let's talk about the Bulldogs.
Yes.
And Lachlan Galvin.
Yes, we've buried it down the back here because they are playing tonight against the Broncos.
You know, rugby league fans are a fickle bunch that change their opinions week to week, but Lachlan Galvin is rapidly on the outer at the Bulldogs. They did lose. Mm-hmm. Look, it was a moment of Nathan Cleary magic that managed to get the Panthers the win, and it was pretty goddamn good. It was so clearly.
And look, to be honest, it was. I don't want to sound like a sore loser, but it was frustrating from the sense that was the only way Penrith got a try.
Yeah.
Charge down. You know, once he makes that charge down and he gets the bounce, he's going to score. They didn't have to put on a play to get through the Bulldogs' defence.
Well,
I'd sort of take heart from that side of it. Matt Burton put the kick in.
Connor Tracy with amazing try-saving tackles twice.
Yeah, so from that point of view, I was frustrated in that. Well, that was the only way Penrith scored a try.
If you watch that shape, the Bulldogs set that shape. We're talking about shape. They set that shape. I watched a breakdown of it. They set that shape like 5 or 6 times throughout the match, and it was obvious that Nathan Cleary read it. You know, and that's the kind of player Nathan Cleary is, and that's why you've got to be. And that's why he did the same thing to the Broncos 2 years in a row, whatever it was. You know, it's like duplicated the try earlier this year or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really fun. Like old mate Lachlan Galvin's coming on and pushing Reid Marnie off the park and pushing Toby Sexton to hooker. It's not sparking any creativity. They're not looking any better when he's on the field. And now, like I saw this morning, actually, people calling him Lachlan Harbour Bridge pass Galvin.
Yeah.
And look, not every play has to be a Harbour Bridge pass out to your winger, Lachlan Galvin.
Yeah, it's like he's trying too hard almost. And there was a really good point, and I did mention it in my column. It was a really good point that was made by Cooper Cronk on Fox. He said that when Galvin you just mentioned it then, Reid Marnie, this is what they do. About the 50th minute, around that point of the game, they bring Reid Marnie off. They put Galvin on at halfback and they move Sexton to hooker. Now, Cronk made the point that when Galvin goes to halfback, Matt Burton does all the general kicking, right?
Yeah.
And so Cronk's point was that, well, Cleary would have realised that, and so Cleary knew that once Galvin went on that Burton was going to be kicking, and sure enough, and that literally happened moments after Galvin went on. Moments after Galvin goes on, Cleary charges down a Burton kick and scores Penrith's only try, and it's enough for Penrith to win the game. Now, you have to think that Cleary hasn't won 4 premierships in a row for no reason. The guy does his homework on his opposition. I reckon he would have premeditated that play. He would have gone, right, once Galvin goes on, Burton's going to do all the kicking and I can target him for a charge down. And boom, he did it. And good luck to him. Penrith won the game on the back of it. Now, and it's not just that either. Sexton and Marnie had a hand in that try to Jacob Preston that he scored. When Galvin went on, he didn't have a hand in any tries. And it's not just, I know that might seem like a simplistic analysis talking about because it was only one try. But hey, they had a hand in a try. He didn't have a hand in any tries when he was on. And further to that, I had the, I've just got the stats written down somewhere here. Yeah. So, not only did Galvin not provide a try assist, he also didn't make a line break or provide a line break assist or make any tackle breaks. Compare that to Sexton, who had 1 line break assist. Marnie had 1 try assist and 1 line break, 2 tackle breaks. And Marnie wasn't even on the field for the whole game, and he had that output. You compare that output from those two compared with what Galvin dished up. I'm sorry. Now we're starting to think that, well, is Galvin just taking up a spot on the bench for the sake of it? And are they now better off putting Galvin in reserve grade for the rest of the year?
That would be the funniest thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. And if it happens and I was the Tigers, I would do a hilarious social media post for it. Because honestly, yeah, like, since he's arrived, they have won some games, right? But against inferior opposition, to be honest. You know, they beat the Tigers, right?
Yeah, they beat they beat Souths. They beat Parramatta.
Yeah, that
with
was
with Galvin.
Yeah, with Galvin, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as they
were beating those teams before he came anyway.
And the one, like, Penrith have now come good. The one good team they've come up against, they weren't able to beat. He wasn't able to manufacture anything. He's disrupted the spine. I don't think I don't think Toby Sexton is a very good hooker, to be honest. Watched bits of it. His service from dummy, because he's not a hooker.
Well, that's the thing. He hasn't had any. I did a comparison the other day. He has never started an NRL game at hooker. Compare him to Reid Barney, who's had 8 years at hooker at NRL level and played in that Parramatta grand final team in 2022 at hooker.
It is one of the things, right? The ball starts with the hooker. So the speed of your team and their ability the time that the halves get to isolate players and things like that comes from the hooker. I'm not criticising Toby Sexton here. I think Toby Sexton is one of the current best, you'd have to say top 10 halves in the competition, right? I'm criticising the choice to move him to hooker. If you really, really want to put Lachlan Galvin in because it's so important, hook Sexton and leave Marnie at hooker. Because they would be better served that way. Sorry to say, I don't think they should be putting Galvin in. But if they really, really, really have to play...
So you're saying that doing that would be better than what they got now?
Yeah, 100%.
It would. But I think overall their best option would be to put Galvin in reserve.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If they really, really have to play future immortal Lachlan Galvin, if they have to, because it's so important to Gus Gould that they play him, hook Sexton when he wants to come on the field.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I know you might go... As I said, Sexton and Marnie laid on that try for Jacob Preston, right? Galvin didn't lay on any tries. I know that's simplistic, but hey, it was a low-scoring game.
Yeah.
It was 1 try each. So it was quite significant in the context of that game. It wasn't like it was 6 tries to 5 or something. There were 2 tries in the game. And they scored one of them. Penrith scored one of them.
What way you look at it, they looked worse when Galvin came onto the field. And after it was the Eels game where he debuted, right? Yeah. After the Eels game, where it was a close-ish affair, and then with 20 minutes to go, Galvin came on and set up a try and scored a try. And Bulldogs fans, of course, are like, yeah, it was the best signing ever, and look how good. I've got friends who are Bulldogs fans. You know, shout out to Sam. He even said it to me like after the match, like, how good did they look when Galvin came on the field? And my thoughts then, I said it the week after in the podcast, was I think that was going to happen anyway, man. Given the way that the Bulldogs throughout the year have grown over the course of the games. Like, some games they're down by 20 points and they come back and win in the second half, right? I firmly believe it was going to happen anyway, and whether Galvin went on the field or not against the Eels was irrelevant. And now you're seeing it when he comes up against an actual difficult opposition. The Bulldogs looked worse when he came on the field. They pushed Toby Sexton to hooker. The service from dummy half gets slower. It's harder for the players to isolate other players, so the halves to isolate players. The every single pass seems to be a Harbour Bridge pass out to the wing. Like, that's how he's spreading the ball. Slow, winding passes out to the wing. Like, sorry, Lachlan, like, number one, Galvin needs to be dropped to reserve grade and they need to go back to how they were 4 weeks ago. And if Matt Burton's at Origin, then a Galvin can come in. Matt Burton's not at Origin. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But if they want to put a utility on the bench, then he's got to come in the back row like a normal utility if they want to play him, or not play him at all. If they really want to play him in the halves, Sexton comes off. But I don't think Sexton should come off. Like, that's just what's going on over there is, like, bad for the Bulldogs.
This is the thing, and are they picking him on the bench because that's the best thing for the team right now, or are they picking him on the bench because they want to save face? They don't want to have a $750,000 a year recruit in reserve grade. I think that they're trying. You can't pick a team just to save face. You have to pick the team that's going to give you the best chance of winning the game. And I think that what they need to do is, and look, Toby Sexton has signed with the Catalans. It's a done deal. He's going to be at the Catalans in 2026 and 2027. I think we were on the money last week when we said finally they were going to be honest. The honesty would come after June 30th.
Straight after.
The honesty comes and then he signs with someone. Yeah, that's exactly how it played out.
Far out, man.
But so my thoughts are that what you need to do is you need to sit down and go, right, okay, this decision, whether we agree with it or not, it's been made now. And you need to go, right, Galvin's going to be the halfback next year. We know that now because Sexton's going to the Catalans. So what you got to say to yourself is, all right, if you have to drop Galvin to reserve grade for the rest of the season and leave Sexton there to the end of the year, and then obviously you're replacing Sexton with Galvin next season, if that's how it plays out, so be it. That's all right.
Yep.
All right, they made the call, that's it. But don't just pick Galvin on the bench for the sake of it this year, just because it looks bad to have a huge money recruit in reserve grade. No. You got to pick the team that's going to give you the best chance of winning the comp. And I think we would agree that right now that team has Toby Sexton at halfback for the full 80 minutes,
yep,
and Reid Money at hooker for the full 80 minutes, and Lachlan Galvin in reserve grade. In terms of the decision to let Sexton go and have Galvin as the halfback, I think they've picked the wrong guy here. I really do. I think they've made the mistake on judging Toby Sexton for the player he was last year and previous to that. They haven't given enough credit to Toby Sexton for the season that he's had this year. They haven't given enough weight to the season that he's had this year in their decision to let him go, in my opinion. And I think that they've also bought into this ridiculous overhyping of Lachlan Galvin by the media. He's an overrated player, in my opinion, and they've bought into that. He's come from one of the bottom side that won the Spoon last year, and hey, the way they're going, maybe they'll win it again this year. They've bought into this hype, and for some reason, they've decided to replace the halfback who had them on top of the ladder in Toby Sexton with a guy who's come out of one of the bottom sides. If you can work that out.
Yeah, well, they got the Broncos and... okay, so we can move on to the next, which is the 18th man thing, right? Because the Bulldogs do have the Broncos, and the Broncos and Bulldogs are both missing key players due to them being picked as 18th man.
Yes.
At least it's not Matt Burton.
Yeah.
Instead, it's Jacob Carraz, for crying out loud. And the justification for picking Jacob Carraz as 18th man, you hear what it is? Because Brian To'o might be injured. How is that picking? How is that an 18th man position?
So frustrating.
That's a 20th man in, or call him in at the last minute because Brian Toto can't. But that's not 18th man. That makes Jacob Carraz the injury replacement.
There's only the 18th player has been activated just once in Origin history. That was when Felice Kafusi replaced the concussed Reece Walsh after a high shot from Joseph Suaalii in Game 1 last year. So it took something like that, a rare event like that, Joseph Suaalii clocking Reece Walsh in the head in the first 10 minutes of the game last year. That's what it takes for the 18th man to play. It takes an extraordinary event like that. Under normal circumstances, the 18th man doesn't get a look in. But this is the problem, and it's happening to Jacob Carraz, and it's going to happen to Reece Walsh as well, we should point out.
Yeah, well, that's what both of the teams tonight are missing key players.
So tonight's game loses key players for nothing. I bet you neither of them play any part in the game on Wednesday night.
Yeah, well, bookmakers don't offer that market because they know the market is pointless. There's $1 they don't play. Yeah, it's not a market because it's they don't have any chance of playing. Like I said, once.
Look, this report I'm reading says, you got two options here for a resolution. Either you let the 18th man just play for their club because it's so unlikely that they're going to feature in the Origin game.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or 5 days.
There's either that option or the other option is you pick the 18th man out of the teams that have the bye this weekend. The thing that I don't like about that option, though, is that, players shouldn't really be overlooked for being the Origin 18th man just because their team's playing on the weekend.
Especially because the way that the draw works is so
I don't think that's really fair. I think you go more with the let them play for their club and then they're the 18th man. Chances are they're not going to feature. And even if they do play, they're not going to have much game time anyway.
Exactly.
So I think you just let the 18th man play for their club the week before.
Even Laurie Daly said that, he doesn't support the way it is. He's the one that's picked Jacob Carraz and Matt Burton and so on.
Yeah, well, it's not his fault.
Yeah,
he's just operating under the rules.
Even he's done it, and he's the one that's saying, I hate the fact that I have to do it.
But this is the Bulldogs 18th man in the last couple of years. 2023... it was Matt Burton for New South Wales for Game 1 and 2. 2024, it was Matt Burton for New South Wales Games 1 and 3. 2025, Kurt Mann for Queensland in Game 1. 2025, Game 2, Matt Burton again, New South Wales. And we've talked about, 2025, Game 3, Jacob Carraz for New South Wales.
Doesn't make any sense.
So they're getting hammered by this 18th man. This is the problem, and they've talked a lot about this. We've talked about it. At least, all right, if your player is in the 17, all right, you lose them for that game. But at least they're getting the experience of playing in an Origin game where they can bring that experience and they'll have more confidence for their club. While you're losing them for that particular game, you get the benefit of them gaining confidence as players by getting Origin experience. The problem with them being 18th man is you don't get that benefit because they don't play in the game and they don't play for their club. So it's a lose-lose situation having your player named as 18th man. They get no benefit from just sitting on the bench for the whole game and watching the game.
Yeah, it's absolutely dumb, man. And it's like I said, Jacob Carraz. There was one of the funny things from last year where Bulldogs fans were saying Carraz should be in the Origin there as the winger over Zach Lomax, and then trying to throw stats at Zach Lomax. It's better than Jacob Carraz, guys. Okay. He's at Parramatta now. You can't accuse me of bias. Dragons fans hate him now. He's still better. He is,
but look, Carraz is improving, though, I would say. But if you had to choose between the two, you would choose Lomax.
Even if you want to put Jacob Carraz in the team, 18th man is the stupidest thing to put a winger in. The 18th man is a utility. And the what's it called? Broncos have
Is Laurie Daly
not Broncos.
Is Laurie Daly doing that to Bulldogs players because the Bulldogs are in a battle with the Raiders for top spot on the ladder at the moment?
No, it's totally because of the Brian Toto thing. Because the 18th man can be named in the team.
No, but I'm just talking about...
And historically?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Then again, he's only been there this year. But still, he picked Matt Burton.
Yeah, but Queensland picked Reece Walsh, which is another weird one. Why you have the fullback as 18th man? They picked Hammer. Billy Slater picked Hammer at fullback to replace Kalen Ponga instead of Reece Walsh, and then put the fullback. Reece Walsh isn't a utility. You know,
No.
Like it's
You either have him at fullback or you don't have him at all. Yeah.
the Felice Kafusi was a good choice, right? Because you can do a good reshuffle there. But if you have a forward go down in as your 18th man to trigger your 18th man, and you have to chuck in Reece Walsh, you've got a massive problem there. Actually, Reece Walsh going to go play prop. I mean, obviously it caused but reshuffling your forwards is worse than reshuffling your backs, to be honest. So yeah, it's just it kind of shows you how little they expect it to be activated, that they aren't tactically picking someone that is a more viable option. You know, they're picking Jacob Carragher and Reece Walsh, which aren't your best. Go and look at every other 18th man for the week for the clubs, right? Who's the 18th man for the Bulldogs tonight? It's going to be Jake Turpin, right? What position does Jake Turpin play? Hooker. Because he can, in a pinch, if he has to, cover the hooker or the halves, if he has to, and then you can do a quick reshuffle for whatever. The Broncos one is Seymour, who's a prop, a forward, right? You don't pick backs. It's bizarre. And that just tells you so much how little they expect them to play.
Yeah, that's right. They're picking backs because they're picking them in case a back gets ruled out, rather than picking them as how we're actually going to use them if they're ejected into the game.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
Exactly. So that's it for Rugby League. Origin is on Wednesday. Let's have some fun. Woke up this morning after 2 hard training sessions. Oh my god, I have so much washing, and boy does it sting! But luckily I have Garame Cleaning Codes Gear Guard, Clear the Funk, proud sponsor of SmartB. I've tried all of the ones that are around, and they're the ones that I suggest. They leave my clothes after training smelling like nothing. They don't do this thing where they smell like chemicals or flowers, and they don't advertise themselves as being a washing powder replacement. Instead, you add 1 cupful to your laundry, and off you go. Head to garamecleaning.co and buy yours now. Gearguard is a proud sponsor of the SmartB Sports Update. Don't forget to play State of Origin 3 on Smart Play. You can win one of 5 Origin jerseys, and you also get double coin payouts for the night. So get into that. It's heaps fun. What's going on over at Wimbledon? Jock is through.
Yeah, there's some Aussies left in the men's draw. 11 seed Alex De Minaur and Jordan Thompson. They're both into the third round. De Minaur won in 4 sets last night. Rinky Hijikata, he's still in, but only just. He's down 2 sets to love and 5-4 against 10th seed American Ben Shelton.
Did you see that?
In their second round clash, which resumes tonight.
Did you see the controversy around that?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh my god, the players were asking to stop the match half an hour before.
Oh, right. Because it's resuming, they would have been playing right at the end of the day.
But I think Ben Shelton was serving, and they stopped it at 9:29 p.m. And everyone's like, let's just finish the match.
We've come this far. It's 5-4. It's 5-4 in the third
one
set.
more game to go. Can we just finish it? And they just wouldn't let them, because half an hour before, when it was, I think it was 2 love or something like that. They were like, let's stop here, okay? Let's just stop here. And then played for another half an hour, blew it all out, and he's up. Then they're like, come on, let us just finish it. And they wouldn't. They were like, nope, game off at 9:30.
Yeah.
We're stopping here. It's
an issue because, you got to think someone like Hijikata, he's probably going to lose the match. We all know that. But that's an extra night's accommodation he's got to fork out for.
Do you think they're going to come?
It's an issue. If you're 5-4 in the third and someone's up 2 sets to love, they should have at least played it to the end of the third.
Yeah.
If Hijikata wins the third, all right, come back the next day. But surely you see, if Shelton wins the third, well then the match is over.
Yeah,
and
that's what it was. Like, they could have just finished it, and he only had to win one more, right?
It's 5-4 in the third.
And so. So they're going to come out today, and possibly play one game.
game. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's so dumb, and
it's like in Test cricket where you get to the end of the day and they have that rule that if you're a good chance of a result on the day, you can play an extra half hour, because they don't want to waste everyone's time by coming back for 15 minutes the next day.
But it was like it's Shelton, I keep forgetting their names. Shelton was up, obviously dominant, obviously going to win. But half an hour before that, both players had said, do you want to stop now? Because we're not going to make it to the end. We know we're not going to make it to the end. Can we stop? And the officials wouldn't let them. And then made them play an extra half an hour to get to the point where now they got to warm up. They got to do everything. And it disrupts Shelton's...
Yeah, the warm-up could go longer than the actual play.
And they can see it's unfair for Shelton as well, because he's got to go do all that, and then he's probably going to make it through, and then it disrupts all of his preparation. I
think there was a Davis Cup tie a number of years ago, I think in Sydney, where Australia played Switzerland, and Switzerland had... Federer and Wawrinka going up against Australia, who had Hewitt and Tomic, and I think Hewitt was playing Wawrinka on the Sunday night, and I think he lost to Wawrinka in 5 sets. But what happened was Wawrinka only needed to win one more game, and they came back on the Monday morning and played one game, and then it was over. And
it's so dumb, man. Yeah. It's so dumb, really. Like, I understand they have rules, but they have to have exceptions for things like that. Guys, you want to do one more game and see how Shelton goes if he wins when we finish?
Yeah, and even if they got back to 5-5, well, at least then you know that it's not just going to be one game. At least play it to 5-5, and then
exactly.
5-4, it'd be silly if they only play one more game. So Hijikata's just still in, may not last too much longer though. It could only be one game, and he's gone. Potentially, unfortunately. Yannick Sinner, Novak Djokovic, Carlos Alcaraz, all still in. Alcaraz had a scare in the first round. He took 5 sets to beat Italy's Fabio Fognini. But good news in the women's too. Aussie Daria Kasatkina is through to the third round as well.
Sick. That's it for the week, right?
Yeah.
That's it for the week. Don't forget.
There's that test match, but same thing. Moving beast. No,
Australia won the first one, right?
Yeah, Australia is 1-0 up against the West Indies in the series.
Their batting is terrible.
Aussies got bowled out for 286 on day one, but again, why talk a lot about it? It's going to move very quickly, the test match.
So Optimum CBD for all your CBD supplies. Oh my God, I could not train as much as I do if I didn't take as much CBD as I do. Make sure you get to optimumcbd.store. Orders over $99 get free delivery. You must be over 18 to order. And of course, if you train, if you lift, if you do jiu-jitsu, if you do MMA, if you play soccer, if you play tennis, if you do anything, if you sweat, make sure you go to garamecleaning.co and get yourself some gear guard. 1 capful to every wash saves everything. The other day I was going through my washing and I found a pair of gi pants that I had actually forgotten, and they were at the bottom of the laundry and had been at the bottom of the laundry for like 4 days. And I actually, as I was putting stuff into the laundry, I was like, what is that? Oh God, it's so bad. Luckily Garame Cleaning Co. after I put my gear guard in, washing smells beautiful. Head to garamecleaning.co. Don't forget, sign up now for Smart Play. It's a jersey giveaway and Guernsey giveaway.
Got to get that one in to please the AFL.
Play more games to win. The person at the end of the round with the highest combined scores across all games for each league will win a jersey or Guernsey of their choice. We'll reach out to you, I think, every Monday. And you've got 7 days to claim your prize, so make sure you're paying attention to your emails. We also have... Smart Odds version 2.0 is now live. Use code GETSMARTODDS for 1 free month. Compare odds across all racing and NRL from next week, I believe. That's it for the week. We'll see you all next week. Go the Blues.
Thanks, John. Catch you next week.
Yeah, awesome.
Enjoy the games on the weekend.
Who's the Dragons playing? Do they have a bye? No, they have
Raiders.
Raiders, yeah, that's right. In Canberra. So there'll be no enjoyment. I'm going to eat some Japanese food tomorrow. There's a big competition tomorrow that we got 20 people competing in, so won't be watching that Raiders Dragons game. Anyway, bye everybody. Bye Dan. Bye producer Chair.